So guys, this is part 2 of my series on the top 30 heavyweights currently active in the sport. So in the first video we covered the fighters who I've listed number 30 through to number 21. In this second part we're going to cover fighters 20 through to number 11. So another 10 heavyweights, and without further ado I'll crack on because there's a lot to get through. At number 20 I've got Artur Szpilka. Szpilka's a hard guy in terms of how you rank him. It's fair to say he is best known for credible losses as opposed to big wins. Credible losses to Deontay Wilder, where I thought he gave Deontay Wilder real problems in multiple rounds. A credible loss to Bryant Jennings, who's another very decent heavyweight. He does have some form on his win. He does have some form in the shape of wins. Most notably against Thomas Adamek. Adamek is a faded force, but at the time Szpilka beat him, he was still semi-relevant, and he's performed very credibly to suggest he's got something to offer in the losses he has had. So I've got Artur Szpilka at number 20, and he's the guy who, if handled correctly and if put in the right fights, could certainly move up towards the top 10 for my money. Number 19, Ruslan Chagayev. I've demoted him due to his last loss against Lucas Browne. I've moved him down to number 19. Potentially there's some mitigating circumstances with relation to that loss. As we know, Lucas Browne failed a performance-enhancing drugs test under highly controversial circumstances. Putting that to one side, I think Chagayev looked slightly like he was in the autumn of his career in that fight. He looked slow, he looked basic, and I've demoted him a good few places because of that performance. Prior to that, as we know, Chagayev has some very solid historic form. Back in the day he beat the likes of Nikolai Valuev, John Ruiz, even more recently beating the likes of Freza Quendo, Francisco Pianeta. Definitely still deserves to be included in the top 20 for my money. At number 18 I've got Carlos Takam. Carlos Takam, again a guy I've demoted a good few places, probably 7 or 8 places, due to his last loss against Joseph Parker. Fundamentally, Takam is a very solid fighter. For me, he lacks the size, he lacks the power, he lacks the out-and-out boxing technique to be in the top 10 of today's heavyweight division. Takam's got a few semi-decent wins on his record, but really, when I actually reviewed it, I had to ask myself, who are the best 3 people Carlos Takam has beaten? And he's beaten some names, which is why he's above the likes of Szpilka and Chisora and Gerald Washington. But fundamentally, his best win, I believe, is over Tony Thompson. And Tony Thompson's faded these days, as we've already discussed. And I found it hard, given the fact he's coming off a big loss. I found it hard to put him higher than 18. So I've got Carlos Takam at number 18. At number 17, one place above him, I've got Johan Depar. Depar really has impressed me of late. Johan Depar knocked out the undefeated Robert Helenius, who was a heavy favourite in their matchup. Prior to that, he's got some other good form. He beat Manuel Char, and he's also known for a very credible loss to Deontay Wilder, where he showed excellent chin and he showed quite a good jab and some decent offence. He caused Deontay Wilder some trouble at points during that fight. So I've got him at number 17. At number 16, we've got Bermane Stiverne, the former WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Bermane Stiverne has the 2 wins over Chris Arreola, as we know. He also is the only man who went the distance with Deontay Wilder. There's a lot of Deontay Wilder opponents who are coming up in this list, and certainly Bermane Stiverne for me is the only one. Well, it's not for me, it's a fact. He's the only one who went the distance against the big punching Wilder, so you've got to give him some credit for that. Wins over Arreola, it's hard to work out the value of that in today's heavyweight division. Had a comeback fight against Derek Rossi where he looked pretty dodgy. He got dropped by Derek Rossi, and he's number 16. So we want to see Bermane Stiverne in a big fight, which will hopefully decide, does he still have what it takes to be a top 10 heavyweight, or is it time for him to move towards the end of his career? And the rumour is he'll be fighting Anthony Joshua, which may show us a bit more on that front. Number 15, this will be controversial, but I've got Vyacheslav Glazkov. Now Glazkov, as we know, is coming off a big loss against Charles Martin, where he pulled out due to injury. It's hard to really understand what that form means. For my money, he was getting outboxed by Charles Martin in the 3 rounds leading up to the stoppage. But nevertheless, whilst Charles Martin has become something of a laughingstock, and whilst that fight was a bit dodgy in terms of working out what the form actually stands for, you cannot deny that Glazkov actually has some very solid form ahead of that fight. He beat Steve Cunningham. He beat Thomas Ademic. He drew with Malik Scott. I mean, this is very credible form, in terms of a fighter who I've got ranked at number 15. I think Glazkov deserves a slight pass for what happened against Charles Martin. And I think that even though Charles Martin's legend has taken somewhat of a knock since that fight, that doesn't wipe out some of the work that Glazkov put in. I agree that Glazkov's beatable. All his wins over Cunningham, Ademic, Malik Scott, they weren't the most convincing. It was a draw with Malik Scott, in fact. But, he's got the wins on his record, and for that reason, we'll put him up there. Number 14, and this one's going to get me stick, and I know it's going to get me stick, but I have to go with what I think. At number 14, I've got Charles Martin, and it's for a simple fact. I'm going to give him the benefit of a doubt. Charles Martin performed terribly against Anthony Joshua. But let's put that to one side. I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he beat Vyacheslav Glazkov. I understand Glazkov pulled out of that fight due to injury. But for me, Martin was looking increasingly comfortable at the time of the stoppage and had won every round. I think it was 2 rounds, and he was winning the 3rd round on my card. So, based on the fact I've got Glazkov at 15, and based on the fact that I think Charles Martin was genuinely beating him, I've got him at number 14. A lot of people, including Boxrec, had Glazkov well in their top 10s ahead of that fight, and Martin scored a win over him. Clearly he's demoted somewhat for the loss to Anthony Joshua, but I think Charles Martin has to be given the benefit of the doubt at this stage. He's got a good win over Glazkov. There aren't too many fighters I've ranked below Charles Martin who have got recent form in terms of a win against a fighter of Glazkov's level, so I've got him at number 14. Number 13, Malik Scott. Malik Scott is not a fighter that the hardcore boxing fans like. There's the suggestion he's got a weak chin, a weak heart. There's a suggestion that he went down too easily against Chisora and Deontay Wilder. And those losses have certainly stopped him from being in the top 10. But what I will say, again, Malik Scott wins over Tony Thompson, wins over Alex Leapai, a good draw over Glazkov, which most people felt he was getting the better of. I think, in the context of today's heavyweight division, you can't exclude Malik Scott. He's one of the most skilled guys out there. He's still picking up decent wins. Thompson and Leapai still form worth inclusion well into the top 20. So I've got Malik Scott at 13. At number 12, a guy who's got the potential to be a lot higher than this, but is coming off 2 back-to-back losses. Bryant Jennings. He is coming off back-to-back losses. Those losses have come at the highest level, to Luis Ortiz and to Vladimir Klitschko. Prior to that, he had a good stoppage win over Artur Spilka, arguably looking better in that fight than Deontay Wilder when he fought Spilka. He also had a win over Mike Perez, who I believe is retired now, but certainly for me was a very, very good heavyweight in terms of skill in his day. So Bryant Jennings, I've got a number 12. Now at number 11, and it pains me to say this, I've got Erkan Tepe. And I don't believe Erkan Tepe should be in the ratings. I believe he should be serving a ban. But I've got to keep it consistent. Tepe returned recently with a 10-round win over Derek Rossi. And I did say, if a fighter isn't going to be serving an active drug ban, I'm going to include them if they merit inclusion. So Erkan Tepe, for me, certainly goes into the list and is at number 11. There's the win over David Price, which has subsequently been marred by the failed tests. Prior to that, even though it's dubious in hindsight, he did have a big win over Johan Depar, who I've rated quite highly as well. I think I had Depar at number 17. So Tepe for me, in at number 11. We're yet to see the full extent of his capabilities, presuming that he's now off the source. So guys, just to reiterate, 20, Spilka, 19, Chagayev, 18, Takam, 17, Depar, 16, Stavern, 15, Glazkov, 14, Martin, 13, Scott, 12, Jennings, and 11, Erkan Tepe. Now, I'm going to do one final video, which is going to be the top 10. Some of the top 10 are slightly more obvious than others, but there are a few surprises who've made my list, so please do check it out. If you've enjoyed this video, if you agree, disagree, do comment below, hit the thumbs up button to support the channel, and please press subscribe so you don't miss out the final part in this list of the top 30. Thanks for watching.